Very good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of Stuart Close Philosophy, and we're discussing in length the chapter, the Homoeopathic Posology from him. The thoroughness about the concepts of posology have been very clearly elaborated and explained by Stuart Close in this chapter, giving different examples and explaining that how much importance is the dose, the potency. And he has explained that why we miss many times a cure in the patient only because we never give a proper potency. We reach to the right remedy, and it is quite easy to reach to the right remedy, but it is quite difficult to reach to the right potency because the things when becomes dynamic, it becomes difficult. Unless and until you learn practically, it is not possible to reach to the right potency. And he has given different examples, and at the same time, he has explained which are the factors on the basis of which you select the potency. The first factor which he has explained is the susceptibility, and then in detail, he has explained about the susceptibility. While explaining the susceptibility, he says that there are many factors which modify the susceptibility, and all those factors which modify the susceptibility, he has explained over there in length. The part of it we have finished in earlier lecture. The remaining part of the same point related with the susceptibility, he is discussing. So let us go on page number 198, the paragraph number 5th. So earlier paragraph, he has explained one case of digitalis, and now he explains further. In contrast to this case, and in further illustration of the necessity for being prepared to use the entire scale of potencies, the following case from the practice of the writer is presented. So he presents one more case, and that's why it becomes more practical and more palatable. The patient was a girl, 18 years of age, in the late stage of her incurable heart disease. She had been under allopathic treatment for over years, steadily growing worse. When first seen by the writer, she was confined to a chair, unable to lie down or remain in bed. General edema, ascites, and hydrothorax existed. Urine was almost entirely suppressed, only about 4 ounces being passed in 24 hours. Tachycardia and dyspnea were most distressing, and death seemed imminent. The history and anamnesis of her case revealed unmistakable calcaria symptoms. She was given a single dose of calcaria carb, CM Finke. The reaction and response to the remedy was surprising. Within 48 hours, the urine began to secrete copiously. For several days, she passed from 100 to 120 to 150 ounces per day. Dropsy rapidly disappeared, and she was soon able to lie down and sleep comfortably. In about 4 weeks, she was able to go out for a ride in a carriage, and not long after was out walking. She lived 13 months in comparative comfort and happiness, and then died quite suddenly of heart failure after slight overexertion. These two cases represent the extremes of therapeutic resources opens to the homeopathic practitioner. So here he has given one example of a case which he has treated with the high potency, the calcarea capsium. In fact, it opened up the case. It has relieved the edema, and patient was quite well for 13 months. The question was there in my mind is if the pathology was advanced, even though it is acute, even though the remedy is right, if you would have given to this patient the LM scale, the patient would have survived more. That may be possibility which we can think depending upon what the illustration he has given up till now. So there are many pros and cons which one has to think when you think about the posology, and that's why your concept should be very, very clear about it. And that's why the last sentence which he mentioned was having very important thing that these two cases represent the extremes of therapeutic resources open to the homeopathic practitioner. So he's saying over there that here you have to think whether I am correct or wrong. The second case, the case might have been solved completely if you would have given the LM scale or low potency. That would be a good option for that case. Susceptibility is modified by habit and environment. That is the next point, modifying the susceptibility. People who are accustomed to long and severe labor out of doors, who sleep little and whose food is coarse, are less susceptible. So he is explaining one important example that people who are accustomed to long severe labor out of doors, they sleep little and whose food is coarse, are very less susceptible. So their susceptibilities get hampered because of all those resources. Persons exposed to the continual influence of drugs such as tobacco workers and dealers, distillers, brewers, and all neglected and all connected with liquor and tobacco trade, druggists, perfumers, chemical workers, etc., often possesses little susceptibility to medicines and usually require low potencies in the illnesses, except where their illness is directly caused by some particular drug influence, when high potency of the same or a similar drug may prove to be a best antidote. So all those things affects the susceptibility. All those things decreases the susceptibility, lowers the susceptibility. Tobacco, alcohol, drugs, perfumes, when used in a strong manner or when used continuously, it deteriorates or decreases the susceptibility of the human being. And that's why it is too much necessary to understand this concept and understand exactly how the susceptibility gets lowered. And if susceptibility is low, the best thing is to give a medicine in low potency in a repeated doses. Or if another feature which is some people strike that high potency of the same drug substance you give in to antidote the effects of that. Idiots, imbeciles, and the deaf and dumb have a low degree of susceptibility as a rule. So those persons who are idiots, imbeciles means who are weak from mental state, mentally weak. Manodaurbolya, that is the meaning which is mentioned in dictionary about imbecile. Deaf and dumb, everyone knows. The susceptibility is comparatively low. There is no rule without its exceptions, and this is especially true in this matter of homeopathic doses. Contrary to what one would expect, persons who have taken many crude drugs of allopathic, homeopathic, or bargain counter prescriptions often require high potencies for their cure. Their susceptibility to the crude drugs and low potencies has been exhausted, and even massive doses seems to have no effect, as where cathartics or anodines have been used until there is no reaction to them. Such cases will often respond at once to high potencies of indicated remedy. In fact, they often require high potency as an antidote. The high potency is effective because it acts on the virgin soil and invades new territory as it were. So those who are who are specifically on long-term use of the drugs, in such cases, if you know that what drug he is consuming and if you know that that drug you can potentize and give it, then that high potency of the same drug substance many people uses. But my suggestion is that it is not like that. You have to just take the case, find it out the totality, and find it out the remedy. If the patient's susceptibility is quite good, give high doses, and high doses or high potencies always works better in such types of cases. So instead of using isopathic method, it is always better to remain with the homeopathic method only. When the old chronics begins to come to see the new doctor, old rounders upon whom the contents of the drug shops and medicine cases of his tincture and low potency competitors have been exhausted in vain, and he will wise, he will get out his little high potency case and prescribe from there. The results will surprise them if it does not surprise him. It should not surprise him because he has been told beforehand. So the same thing which he has mentioned over there, that if you know that patient is consuming certain drugs continuously, and if you are treating him, take the totality, find it out a remedy, and give it in high potency, it will definitely antidote the effect as well as it will produce its own effects. The next point is the sit and character and intensity of disease has some bearing upon the questions of the dose. So that is the second point which he has mentioned, 5 points which he has mentioned in selecting the dose. This is the second point which he starts now. Certain malignant and rapidly fatal diseases like cholera may require material doses or low potencies of the indicated drug. Hahnemann's famous prescription of camphor in drop doses of the strong tincture given every 5 or 10 minutes with which so many thousands of lives have been saved is an illustration. Later, after reaction has been established and other remedies corresponding to the symptoms of later stages of disease come into view, the higher potencies are required. He has given one example that if patient is in an acute state and he is in the state of very severe dehydration with a cholera, then the Hahnemann's experiment he has explained over there that Hahnemann have given the camphor tincture to stop that or to control that. And later on, use whatever the medicine, depending upon the totality of the symptoms, and give that medicine to the patient in high potency. So this is one method, this is practical method which he has mentioned. All those practical methods we have missed. What? Because we were just thinking about what is acute remedy, what is perfect simillimum, how it will work, what it will cause. All those things matters a lot. My suggestion always to all of you is that be practical. It is not like that just Hahnemann have told single dose and give one dose and one remedy and all those things. Hahnemann himself have made many experiments. He is explaining that give the camphor in further tincture and followed by a indicated remedy. So he is also saying if need is there, you palliate the case and then you treat it according to the symptoms similarity. So such things one has to practically utilize. Then we can get the acute results and patient starts believing on you if you produce such types of results. Generally speaking, diseases characterized by diminished or vital action require the lower potency, while diseases characterized by increased vital action responds better to the higher potency. But this again is modified by the temperament and constitution of the patient. So this is very clearly is mentioning where the susceptibility is low, means the patients are not presenting strongly, the potency is low. If the patient's susceptibility is high and he is presenting very strong symptoms, then definitely you have to go for high potency. But this again modified by temperament and constitution of the patient. Uncomplicated, typical syphilis in its primary stage, the chancre still being existence may be cured speedily by mercury in medium or high potency if the patient is on of the nervous or sanguine temperament, and especially if he has not already received the treatment. So he has mentioned if you are damn sure that case of syphilis in acute state with a nervous or sanguine temperament is there, then moderate or high potency will work. But if temperament it changes, so he explains, if he is sluggish type, our mercury in second or third trituration will probably require. So if the remedy is same, but the temperament is like phlegmatic, then low potency will work. If the patient presents himself later, having already received the conventional large doses of mercury and potash until the characteristic dynamic and pathogenic symptoms of those drugs have been produced, low potencies will be of no avail. With either susceptibility has been exhausted or a drug idiosyncrasy has been developed, the drugs must be antidoted and further treatment carried on by higher potency. These remarks apply not only to the mercury and syphilis, but to practically all other diseases and drugs. If not to be interfered, that mercury is the only remedy for syphilis. For in syphilis, as in all other diseases, we must individualize both case and remedy if we expect to cure our patient. So he is explaining over there one more thing. that if you know that patient is continuously on the drugs and his drugs have produced certain effects, then there is need to antidote that drugs first and then give indicated remedy in higher potency. It should be indicated remedy. He has not mentioned that mercury is the only remedy for the syphilis. There are many more remedies for the syphilis. It depends how the patient presents and what the patient presents. If he presents typical symptoms of mercury, yes, then it is a mercury. But if he is presenting symptoms which are not at all mercury, but they are related with the hydrastis, you give the hydrastis. It varies from individual to individual. What has been said of the use of higher potencies in cholera after reaction has been established by camphor tincture is applicable in many other diseases of malignant character and rapid progress. In the beginning, when the torpor or collapse indicate the dangerously low vitality and deficient reaction, a few doses of low potency may be required until the reaction comes about, after which the after which the potency should be changed to a higher one if it is necessary to repeat the remedy. The question is entirely of the susceptibility. The higher the susceptibility, higher the potency. Underline this. This is very important. One must know. What he says over there is very, very perfect. He is very clear regarding the potency. So he mentions higher the susceptibility, higher the potency. And this is true. Because this, if you know this is the acute case and susceptibility is very high and patient is presenting in an acute way, you must think about the higher potency. We must learn how to judge the degree of susceptibility if we would be successful as a homeopathic prescriber. And this applies not only to normal susceptibility of the patient as evidenced by its constitution, temperament, etc., but to the varying degree of susceptibility as modified by the character and stages of his disease and by previous treatment. So there are many factors which you have to take into consideration while judging the susceptibility, the seat of the disease, the nature of the disease, its intensity, then the what previous treatment have been taken by the patient, all those things, the stage of the disease, all you have to take into consideration. At one stage, he may need low potency, as already pointed out, and at another high potency. A man who confines himself to the use of single potency or two or three potencies, be they low or high, is not availing himself of all measures of his art and will frequently fail to cure. Very perfect sentence which he has mentioned over there. There are a lot of chances if you don't use variety of potency according to the patient's need. If you are fixed or rigid with one or two potencies, then you will definitely get failure, what is rightly said. And this happens because sometimes you might require 6, sometimes you might require 1M, sometimes you might require 10M, sometimes you might require CF. It varies from individual to individual, and you should not be rigid to a fixed potency. Attempts have been made to lay down rules governing the dose based upon pathological classification of diseases, as for example, that the lower preparation should be used in chronic diseases with the tendency to disorganization of tissues and in acute disease, or that the high potency should be used in purely functional and nervous affections. So these are very specific common things that if the disease is chronic, pathological, you must use potency generally low and in repeated doses till the susceptibility gets around. And if it is acute, specifically with high susceptibility, higher the potency. But these classifications are not reliable. They only serve to confuse the mind of the student and distract his attention from the main point, which is to determine the degree of susceptibility of a particular patient at a given time. So ultimately, everything depends upon what is exactly the susceptibility. And judging the susceptibility gives you a very perfect idea about understanding or choosing the potency. Thus, the whole matter of the dose, like the selection of the remedy, resolves itself into a problem of individualization, which, as a principle, governs all the practical operations of homeopathy. Looking at this subject broadly and having the highest degree of success in view, it is seen that it is as necessary to individualize the dose as it is the remedy, and that whole scale of potencies must be open to the prescriber. So potency always depends upon the most important factor, that is the individualization. So the remedy, as we used to think that remedy, it requires or it depends upon the individualization. The potency also is individualization. And at the same time, he explains over there, if you are a good homeopathic prescriber, you must have whole range of potency. Occasionally, the case will be made which is not at all susceptible to the indicated remedy. In such cases, temporary insensibility to the medicine may be traced to the previous abuse of medicines or to an exciting regimen. If time and the exigencies of the case permit, it is sometimes best to cease all medication for a few days and carefully regulate the diet and regimen. Then medication may be resumed using according to the temperament and constitution of the patient, either a low or medium potency. So sometimes you get that patient has consumed a lot of allopathic medicines, and after giving allopathic medicines, the patient susceptibility is hampered and he's showing the drug symptoms. It is better to withdraw his drugs, wait for some time, let the susceptibility settle, let the patient settle, let the his totality comes out clearly, and then you judge whatever the remedy, depending upon the symptom similarity and along with the temperament. Think about the moderate or high potency or low potency. It varies from individual to individual, but it depends upon all those situations. Hahnemann has recommended in such cases the administration of opium in one of the lowest potencies every 8 or 12 hours until some signs of reactions are perceived. If there is a benign state, that means there are no symptoms coming out and you are in confusion what to prescribe. Hahnemann mentions one common thing, that you give the opium to the patient and repeat it at least till the symptoms or till the reaction comes out. By this means, he says, the susceptibility is increased and new symptoms of the disease are brought to light. Carbovich, Laurocerius, sulfur, and thuja are other remedies suited to this condition, such a condition. They sometimes serve to arouse the organism to the reaction so that indicated remedies will have. So this is one more thing which he has mentioned. Other than opium, the carbovich, the laurocerius, sulfur, and thuja. These are four more remedies have been mentioned by Hahnemann in order to stimulate the patient. And to conclude this specific session, he mentions in last paragraph, remedies used in this way where way are known as intercurrents. The nodules, the soranum, the cepilinum, the medorinum, the tuberculinum, even carcinosin are also to be remembered in this condition in cases where the latent diseases represented by these medicines are present, as shown by existing symptoms or by the history or previous symptoms of the case. A single dose of the appropriate nozzle is moderately in a moderately high potency will sometimes clear up the case and bringing symptoms into view, which will make it possible to select remedy required to carry on the case successfully. Such use of the remedies must be based upon careful examination and study of the history of the case and not merely upon empirical assumptions. Here, as elsewhere, individualization and law of similia must guide. If there are students over there, keep it in your mind. This paragraph is a short note topic for intercurrent remedy and how to use intercurrent remedies that he has mentioned over there. So write over there intercurrent remedies on your book and short note. And he mentions that intercurrent remedies are needed whenever the case remains standstill, there is no further progress, there are no symptoms, and then you have to choose the intercurrent. Then you have to think about nodes depending upon the case. Sometimes opium, sometimes lauroceriaceous, sometimes carbovate, sometimes sulfur, sulcites, thuja. So it depends. It is not fixed remedy, but you have to choose in order to stimulate the susceptibility, and patient should express the symptoms. And if symptoms comes out, then definitely it will going to work and it will produce, it will give you totality and you can find exactly the presentation. So that's all for today. We'll meet tomorrow with the another part of the posology, that is the repetition of doses. So thank you being there. We'll meet tomorrow. no Materia Medica session will be there today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Good night.